the dark and dreary night of April 14, 1912, passengers of the RMS Titanic were returning to their cabins after another eventful night of festivities. Little did they know they were about to partake in one of the most devastating ship sinkings of all time. At approximately 11:40 p.m., the starboard side of the Titanic scraped against an iceberg in the Atlantic and began its path down to the sea floor that would ultimately lead to 1,517 deaths. The sinking of the ship was so significant that the film The Titanic was released in 1997 with an incorporated love story in it to truly convey the emotional strain that many passengers experienced. The biggest hardships were the separations of families and loved ones, given that there was not enough lifeboats aboard or time to load the people into the lifeboats in order to keep the lives of everyone on the ship.
Want to know the specifics about the RMS Titanic? On April 2nd, 1912, Harland and Wolff in Belfast, Ireland, completed the structure of the Titanic. It measured 882 feet long, 92 feet 6 inches wide, and 104 feet tall. The boat needed 600 tons of coal each month to operate, and 3 coal-run engines had a total of 46,000 horsepower. Given all of these spectacular capabilities, there wasn't much concern on board about the possibility of the Titanic sinking. However, it was concerning for some that there were 20 lifeboats that could hold 1,230 people, and yet there was 2,223 people on board. This concern was clearly revealed once the Titanic broke in half and was fully submerged with water. Sadly, being the biggest boat of its time, the Titanic took 26 months to build, yet was only in use for 4.5 days.
Some people aren't aware of the true tragedies and shocking statistics that occurred during the sinking of the RMS Titanic. At the time of the collision, there were a total number of 2,223 passengers and crew aboard. That being said, only 706 survived. The Titanic was only 4 days into its voyage before crashing into the iceberg. The iceberg was spotted only 30 seconds before the collision, making it nearly impossible to avoid. While the iceberg caused a gash of 220 to 245 feet at the base of the ship, the Titanic only took 160 minutes to sink to the bottom of the ocean. The iceberg and the Titanic were coincidentally at the exact same position at the exact same time. Because the iceberg was only traveling 8 miles per day, it would have been easy to avoid had the ship left a few hours earlier or later. Not only were many innocent lives lost to this tragedy, but also valuables. Over $6 million worth in cash, bonds, and jewelry sunk in the collision prior to the sinking. The Titanic was doomed as soon as it struck the iceberg. The Titanic was built to have room for error with a total of 4 forward compartments able to flood without the whole ship sinking. However, almost instantly, 6 of them ruptured, causing the ship to begin to submerge. Aside from all of the appalling statistics, cold hard data can be used to view a more mathematical aspect regarding the pieces of the Titanic and the iceberg. After contact with the iceberg, it took the Titanic 2 hours and 40 minutes to fully submerge with water and then begin to sink. Just before it was completely submerged, the Titanic broke into 2 pieces that caused them to ultimately land 600.46 meters apart on the sea floor. Both of the pieces were traveling at approximately 4.47 meters per second at an estimated angle of 30 degrees below the horizontal. Once given data about the speed and positioning of the Titanic ship's pieces and the iceberg, you are able to break the broken ship's paths into vertical and horizontal components. After finding this, you can simply place the values into the parametric equations. Displayed are the exact positions of the pieces at any given time. To find the horizontal component, you would multiply the velocity by the cosine of 30. To find the vertical component, you would multiply the velocity by the sine of 30. Once you get that the components are 3.8 meters per second and 2.235 meters per second, you can substitute the values into the parametric equation. With this being said, the parametric equations for the given path of piece 2 would be x equals 3.87 times time for the horizontal motion, and y equals negative 2.235 times time for the vertical motion. A negative sign would need to be placed in the vertical equation because the ship is moving downward on the xy coordinate plane. Now, finding the parametric equations for piece 1 of the ship is a little more of a difficult process. In order to find the angle theta below the horizontal, you must use trig functions, in this case the tangent function, to find the unknown. Once calculating that this angle must be 57.56 degrees, you would then use the same approach as for solving for piece 2. Resulting in only slightly different numbers than in piece 2, the parametric equations for piece 1 result in x equals 3.77 times t for the horizontal motion, and y equals negative 2.39 times t for the vertical motion. Although most people look past the mathematical significance of the sinking of the Titanic, certain equations can be constructed. These equations can help researchers to gain a better understanding of the reasoning behind the crash and the particular paths that all the objects traveled on before, during, and after this horrible tragedy. In order to determine how the ship and the iceberg could have avoided collision, you can place the iceberg at the origin of the xy coordinate plane. Since the iceberg was placed at the origin, its parametric equations would simply be x equals 0 and y equals 0.
What's a parametric equation anyway? A parametric equation is used as a way to define relationships between equations using parameters.
Every night in my dreams, I see you, I feel you. That is how I know you go on. Far across the distance and spaces between.